Ever since I was a little kid, I have been waiting years for an official Xbox handheld. And unfortunately, we still have to wait because this is not it. So this is the Xbox Ally, technically the ASUS ROG Xbox Ally. Really stupid name, so I'm just going to call it the Xbox Ally for the rest of this review. This is a very complicated device. This is coming from somebody that absolutely loves the Steam Deck, loves playing Xbox games, also enjoys PlayStation, and Switch 2 as well. So I am a pretty wide range of gaming habits and interests, but this device in particular is extremely interesting. There's things that I really love about the Xbox Ally, but there's also things that I really hate. So let's go ahead and get right into it. If you're new here, my name is Arnell, the comic book gamer, and on this channel we talk all about gaming tech and accessories. So if that is something that you're interested in, if you like staying plugged in and up to date on the latest gaming handhelds, well, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss more videos like this. Also, you will see some accessories that I use for my Xbox Ally, so I will have those linked down below as affiliate links if you want to check them out and help support the channel. So let's talk about what the Xbox Ally is. Now, Xbox will tell you that this is just an Xbox. And that's sort of true and sort of not, mostly not true. It's really just a PC handheld that is still running full Windows 11, but at least comes with an Xbox launcher. So it allows you to sort of jump right into Xbox and jump into your specific Game Pass library or any of your Xbox games that you have paid for. You can also play Steam games, Epic games, GOG games, a whole wide range of different launchers. So you can really use this as a full desktop experience if you'd like, or you can just use it specifically in sort of the Xbox big picture mode. I think it's Xbox full screen experience is what they call it, but that's basically what it is. It is a PC handheld that comes with Xbox full screen experience, sort of running front and center, but really underneath that, it is the same sort of just general DNA that the previous generation ROG Ally used to be. Now, of course, this has some upgraded internals as far as newer processor. I will have some specs here on screen if you want to check those out, just to kind of see what is included in this Xbox Ally. But some notable things that stick out to me is the fact that this comes with 16 gigabytes of RAM, 512 gigabytes of storage, and it does run Windows 11, so it's basically using the latest operating software from Windows. But honestly, I haven't really gone into Windows or the desktop experience myself very much. A little bit more on that a little bit later. But yeah, most of my experience has been purely with the Xbox full screen experience. And now let's talk about some things that I like, which is that Xbox full screen experience. So I have the Steam Deck and I absolutely love it. One of the main reasons why I love the Steam Deck so much is because of that big picture mode. It feels like a console. For me, it was a great entryway into PC gaming. The Xbox Ally is sort of in that realm. However, the Steam Deck is far easier as an entry-level sort of PC gaming experience. I'll do a video sort of comparing the Xbox Ally and the Steam Deck a little bit later. Subscribe if you want to see that, because I have quite a few thoughts that I want to pit these two devices up against each other. However, the Xbox Ally sort of does the big picture mode in a similar justice and similar sense. However, it's not quite as seamless. So when you first get the Xbox Ally and you unbox it and you set it up, in my case, it took about an hour to an hour and a half between unboxing it and actually being able to play my first game. That's crazy. That's absolutely insane. Now, if you're coming from like a Switch 2 or, some other handheld console or something like that, well, pretty much within like 10-20 minutes, you are good to go and able to just start jumping in and using it. Even in the Steam Deck's case, I think I was maybe 20 minutes max before I was even able to get into a game. So the Xbox Ally is still sort of plagued with some of the Windows 11 fluff in the sense of just some software updates and things that need to happen there. But circling back to the full screen experience, it is a great experience. I'm able to see all of the Xbox games that I want to see. It also sort of seamlessly blends your other libraries into there. And so there is a dedicated library button, which honestly, I didn't even realize what that was until about 2 or 3 days into actually using the Xbox Ally. And so once you actually go into your library, you're able to see not only your Xbox games, but all your Steam games, your Epic games, all of the different games that you have from different libraries all in one place. And that's something that I really appreciate. Now, you can also sort of do that with Steam as well and sort of integrate some other games from like GOG, for example. I have like Metal Gear Rising Revengeance that is purchased through GOG, but I have that appearing in my Steam library. So that's something that I am able to set up, but it's not quite as seamless and sort of integrated from the factory that you have with the Xbox Ally. So I will give it some software props for that, for just sort of blending in all your libraries and really making it super seamless to just jump into a Steam game or an Xbox game or whatever you want to play. Now, one of the new features that you will see with this new ROG is a dedicated Xbox button. So you're able to just press that and go right into the games bar, I think it's called, even though it doesn't really look like a bar, it's more like a side menu that comes up. Anyways, you're able to adjust some quick settings. So you're able to adjust the brightness, the volume level, mute your mic or not. You're able to, also jump into different recently played games. You're able to exit or quit a game that you're currently playing. If you hold that button down, you're able to pull up your multitasking. And also in this multitasking section is where you're able to jump between the Xbox full screen experience or the dreaded desktop experience, which, yeah, like I said, I've hardly ever used that desktop experience, but it is there if you are needing to use it for a specific function, or if you just don't have a PC or something like that and you need to use this as a PC, well, then you're able to use this as a full-on PC, which is quite nice in certain scenarios. Now, some other features that you'll see is that there's now 2 USB-C ports at the top of the device, allowing you to charge and also use other peripherals at the same time, just all right at the top, which is quite nice because the Switch 2, for example, still has the USB-C port at the bottom, but they've included one at the top. The main reason they still have one at the bottom is because of the docking system. That's what makes it so easy to switch from, sort of a console to a handheld, but that is something that is nice to see on this, is that it does have 2 USB-C ports just ready to go right at the top, as well as your SD card slot as well. So that way you're able to basically do everything that you need to do all at the top of the device, including your headphone jack, your sleep mode, all of the different features and things like that. Now let's talk about the comfort. That is something that I also really enjoy. So, from a comfort standpoint, I'm tempted to say that this is the most comfortable handheld that I personally have. But then every time I look at the Steam Deck and I look at not just how the sort of my hands just rest around the grips, but also the button placement and the thumbstick placement and the just access to the trackpads. Yeah, this isn't a Steam Deck video, but for the Xbox Ally, it is a very comfortable device. It's very reminiscent of like the PlayStation Portal, for example, in the fact that you literally basically have, 2 controller joints that are just sort of sticking out, and then you have a screen slapped in the middle. And so it's very similar. If you have a PlayStation Portal, have ever used one, then you're going to feel right at home with that. It's a, much nicer design over the previous ROG Ally, the original ROG Ally, for example. And what is interesting is if you notice when you are holding the Xbox Ally, the screen is actually sort of tilted up towards you. And so in my case, that's actually made this a little bit easier of a viewing experience because the screen is just coming up towards me. So my hands are sort of resting like normal, but then the screen is just angled up towards me. So I don't know, it's just a little bit of a nicer, more pleasant experience. Now, one of my absolute favorite features about this is the front forward-facing speakers. Not only are they just in a good position, but these are probably the best speakers that I've ever used with a handheld device. I absolutely love the just not only the placement, but also the quality of the speakers, because this actually gives me a sort of surround sound experience just using the speakers on the handheld. It is crazy how the sound just sort of, comes out almost at an angle. It's not coming straight at you. It's almost coming a little bit off to the sides and sort of, off axis a little bit. So that way the sound is actually coming off axis and it's sort of hitting around your ears versus just sort of coming straight at your face, which is actually really cool. So I'm able to actually get the drop on some people when I'm playing Call of Duty or different things like that, or I'm able to hear like an enemy come up behind me in Gears of War, for example, and I'm able to actually hear a sort of 3D surround sound, setup. Obviously, this isn't actually that. However, it just sort of feels like that in the quality and just the overall punchiness of the speakers. I hardly ever need to raise the speakers higher than about 50%, but obviously I have way more speaker capacity if I need to. And so in my case, the speakers are not only loud, they're also crystal clear, and I love the sort of depth that I'm able to hear things. I'm able to hear if somebody's coming up behind me. I'm also able to hear how loud they're coming up behind me as well. So if I hear footsteps very loud behind me, I'm able to hear and decipher and understand all of that information just from the front front-facing speakers. So I don't hear enough praise coming to these speakers as much as I think that they are deserved, because I think that these are incredible speakers, and I think that ASUS really did a very good job designing these speakers and really just sort of sets it apart from the other PC handhelds that are available at the moment. Now, the battery life, I will touch on that sort of briefly. If you've seen my other PC handheld reviews, battery life for me is not really a concern because I typically only game for about 1 to maybe 2 hours at a time, per gaming session. And in my case, I usually plug it in after each gaming session or after every other gaming session. So in my case, and that's just something that I do with all of my handheld devices. And so in my case, I'm never really in a situation where I run out of battery and wish that I had more. However, you can obviously use a portable power bank. You can also just bring the charging cable with you. A lot of times if you're playing a game, you're usually near, a couch or, or something like that where you can plug in, at a wall outlet or something like that. At least that's how it is for me. But if I'm ever just out and about and I don't have access to a charger, in my personal case, going about 1 to 2 hours at a time, I'm never running out of battery. That being the case, though, it is worth to note because not everyone uses, handhelds the same way that I do. This is a 60 watt hour battery, which is about 10 watt hours more than the previous ROG Ally to my understanding. And, you're usually able to get at least sort of the, there's obviously the specs that you can just look up online, but just from actual real world use, from what I've been seeing other people talk about their actual usage from this particular device. Of course, it all depends on the game and the settings that you're using. But if you're playing a more graphic intensive game and you're on, higher TDP, 15 watts or 20 watts, for example, then you're probably going to get maybe about an hour to an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours in some rare cases, especially if you kind of turn down the brightness and things like that. Or if you're playing a, lighter game that isn't as heavy on the device, maybe like Hades or Silksong, for example, then you're probably going to get somewhere between about 4 to 6 hours. So it could be somewhere in that range, again, depending on your settings and brightness and all of that sort of jazz. So take all of that battery information with you and do with that what you will. But in my case, it doesn't matter to me. I could be playing on 20 watts, highest TDP, and I'd be fine for 99% of my gaming session. So battery life just for me isn't that big of a deal. But again, not everyone's like me. It is also worth to note that if you do need to charge, let's say you run out and you needed to quickly charge and not play while you're charging, but needed to get back into the game quickly. Fast charging is, I believe, 0 to 50% in about 30 minutes if you use the included 65 watt charger. So that is good to note, and that is good to have that capability if you're in that unique situation where you need it to fast charge super quickly, and then as soon as it's at 50%, you can unplug, and now you can just like run wild without being near a power source. I don't know. Fast charging to me isn't that big of a deal. I'm just being completely honest. But that's just a me thing. Now, we got to talk about the display, and I'm doing this video in a little bit of a different format where I'm not really just starting with just the pros and then going into the cons. I'm going to kind of blend everything all together. So with the display, it is a bit of a mixed bag. So it's not an OLED display, but as you've seen with my other videos, I'm not a big like LCD versus OLED. Sure, OLED is objectively better, and that would objectively be a better experience. It would also help the battery life as well. However, with the standard LCD display that you get, it does look very nice. It's very vibrant indoors. You do get a lot of, very saturated colors. You get a really nice viewing experience. And indoors, it is certainly bright enough in most instances. Now, if you're under like directly bright lights or something like that, then you'll probably be wanting for a little bit higher brightness, because this does max out at about 500 nits. However, when you're outside, that's where I see the biggest sort of downside and drawback of this display. It just does not get bright enough outside. So if it struggles inside under the brightest lights, at least in my case, and then if I try playing outside, it's just terrible. It's not good. It's really hard to see anything, and you're basically looking for shade anywhere that you go. So it's one of those things that if they bumped up the brightness, then that would affect the battery life. And for people that need good battery life, that don't, that play, maybe on a train or something like that, and they don't have access to a charger, well, then it would be kind of good to not have the device max out its peak brightness and eventually drain the battery. So those are some of the things that you might need to think about and consider with some of these like laundry list of dream same features that you wish a handheld would have. Now, I did mention earlier with like the Xbox full screen experience and the Windows experience, and how it took me about an hour to like an hour and a half to actually get into the actual like first game after setting this up. Yeah, this like, it's very complicated because basically it gives you sort of the best things about Windows PC gaming and the worst things about PC gaming, Windows PC gaming, all in the same device. So coming from like the Steam Deck, for example, I can't play every game that is on Steam. And I'm not just talking about like AAA high performance games. I'm also talking about certain games that require a specific launcher or certain games that use certain anti-cheat things. There's just certain games that you just cannot play. Like I believe Valorant or Apex Legends or something like that. One of those, free-to-play games that are certainly, popular games, you just can't play those on the Steam Deck. Whether you wanted to play on handheld or on a actual desktop setup, you just cannot play those because they are not compatible with the Steam Deck. So there are some things that the Steam Deck, sort of has as, sort of against it, even though it's super, awesome and lightweight in the performance and everything like that. It does fall prey to certain operating system limitations as far as just compatibility with Windows versus Linux. Now, Windows PC just has no problem actually using, being able to play and support some of these games. Now, will it be able to actually run these games? That all depends on, your specific Windows PC setup or whatever's the case. But like with the Xbox Ally, yes, you can play Apex Legends and different things like that. Maybe not at the highest settings, but you're able to do that. There is nothing stopping you from being able to play virtually every PC game that is out there, which is a huge plus. That is one of the benefits and great things about Windows PC gaming. One of the biggest drawbacks is all of just the Windows fluff that you get. So constant Windows driver updates. I've had, even with the Xbox Ally in particular, Armory Crate, which is sort of the program that allows you to fine-tune all of the performance settings. I've had Armory Crate just interrupt a game that I was playing. And of course, I didn't get footage because, well, I don't record every single time I play my game. So I don't have the footage and the proof to sort of back this up. So take this with a grain of salt. But I was playing Hades one night and Armory Crate interrupted my session of Hades probably 2 to 3 times with a message saying that it needed an update. And it was apparently a very critical update because I didn't want to do the update right then and there. So the first 2 times I, turned down the update, or I hit cancel or do later or whatever was the option there. But then after the 3rd time, I realized that, okay, this must be a really critical update that's stopping me from actually being able to play a simple game. And so, yeah, of course, I had to stop what I was doing. And you also don't have one place to update all of the things that need to be updated, whether it's Armory Crate or Windows itself or drivers, different things like that. You have to kind of go into different settings. For Windows updates, you have to go into the desktop setting and go into actual settings, like for the Windows 11 PC. But then for Armory Crate, you go into Armory Crate and then go into updates. And then even in there's different section of updates that need to, do. So even if you hit update all, there might still be a different section that requires different updates. So anyways, updates are sort of the thing that's sort of plaguing this, because it's a very console feeling experience when you're just using it in Xbox full screen experience. But then the minute that any updates need to happen, the average console player that does not use, Windows PCs, for example, or there's many people that don't even have a computer, they just use like an iPad or a tablet. And so there's many instances where the minute that you leave the Xbox full screen experience and have to do anything with updates or any sort of PC-oriented task, that's sort of the biggest drawback of this device. The other thing that's just sort of annoying is some of the redundancy with this device, and just overall, this just feels like a very weak collaboration. The only thing that makes this an Xbox is the dedicated Xbox button, which is just sort of wasted real estate, because you have the Xbox button, but then right next to that, you have the Armory Crate button as well. And if you press either one of these buttons, if you just slide over from all that it does is sort of pull up this menu bar, and it just takes you to a specific tab. So if you press that Xbox button, it's going to pull up the Xbox Games bar. But then if you slide over to the left, then you're going to be in the Armory Crate section and be able to adjust your settings there too. So you have sort of a redundancy with these buttons. And really, that Xbox button is the only thing that makes this an Xbox. It's very silly because the Xbox full screen experience, correct me if I'm wrong, because if I'm wrong, then that means that it's already available on other handheld devices. But if it's not already available, it will be available very soon, because Xbox has a whole marketing campaign of everything that you use is now an Xbox, whether it's your phone, a PC handheld like the ASUS ROG Ally, the original one that was in their own marketing campaign where they said this is an Xbox. So they have a whole marketing campaign where if it has a screen and connects to Wi-Fi, it is an Xbox. And so why would they limit the full screen experience to just this device? Well, that's just something that they're going to include in other devices as an available software update or whatever's the case. Just like how you have Steam Big Picture mode available with the Steam Deck, but you can also use Steam Big Picture mode with this Xbox Ally or really any other device that is compatible with Steam. So anyways, that's kind of a long rant, but basically this is it's a very interesting device because, like I said, it does all of the great things that Windows PC gaming allows you to do and the freedom of Windows PC gaming, but all of its drawbacks as well. And just to me, this is not an Xbox. It's just a Xbox, compatible PC handheld that just makes accessing Xbox easier. That's literally it. I mean, you're not getting some sort of performance improvement with Xbox games particularly. You're not getting some sort of extra optimization with Xbox games. It's literally just the same experience that you would have with like a Lenovo Legion Go S, but just with an Xbox full screen experience, which I'm sure is going to be available as a software update for not only that handheld, but other handhelds that are out there as well. Now, of course, it would be very silly for me to do this whole video and not talk about games performance. Games and their performance overall is kind of lacking as well. So once you're actually in a game, everything is relatively smooth, unless you have some like update that needs to happen, like what happened with me with the Armory Crate, Hades situation. But unless you have some sort of update that's going to literally disrupt your game, then generally once you're in a game, everything's good. The problem is actually getting to the game. So I'm not talking about like navigating the software or anything like that. I'm talking about the fact that it takes quite a while to actually launch a game, whether that's like Call of Duty Black Ops 6 for me takes about a minute to 2 minutes for me to actually get into the game, just to get to the lobby. And then I have to wait, obviously, just for the lobby to, connect a match and stuff like that. But that's just Call of Duty itself. There's other games like Gears of War that take, maybe about 30 seconds to a minute to actually get into the game. It's usually booting up before it actually gets to like the title sequence of the game. Or, other games can be very quick to just jump into, like Hades, for example. I'm usually in and able to start playing within about 15 to 20 seconds. But it's just once you actually get into a more higher performing game, it just takes a while for it to load. When I actually turn on the device, which is another thing that I should actually get into, this doesn't really have a sleep mode. It has a sleep mode, but once you hit that that button at the top, and then you plug it in, for example, the device just stays on. Like it literally stays on the lock screen and the screen does not turn off. And it's literally running at full power the entire time while it's plugged in and charging. The only way that I've found as sort of a workaround for that is to actually put it into hibernate mode. Hibernate mode is not a sleep mode. It's basically 2 degrees of separation from actually turning the device completely off. So it really just allows you to, go into hibernate mode, come back to the device maybe a day or two later, and you maybe would have lost about 10% of battery. That's at least been my experience with it. Now, getting back to sort of the software optimization, once you actually power on the device from hibernate mode, for example, it takes a while for things to sort of spin up and start working again. So I've come across many situations where I wake it up from hibernation mode, I wait about 10 seconds before I start doing anything on the screen, and then even then, when I hit like the Xbox Games Bar button or whatever is the case, I still have to wait like 30 seconds for me to be able to do literally anything, because it's like you're introducing a command to a device that is asleep or is like trying to wake up, and so it immediately just halts everything that you're trying to do. So it's very frustrating. You literally just have to wait on the device and be very patient. It's quite frustrating. Then once you're in a game, you better not like think that you can like check out something in your library or check out notifications or something like that while the game is running. Because if you do that, and let's say you accidentally hit the library button, for example, which is right next to the start button, really poor placement. I don't even know that I necessarily need a dedicated library button. But anyways, that's besides the point. If you accidentally hit the library button while you're playing a game, it will literally just interrupt the game. And like, it'll take like at least 10 to 15 seconds for you to be able to get back into the game. And so, you know, if you're in a position where like something crazy is happening on screen, you accidentally hit the library button, well, you like either just died or you lost your progress or something happened, because now you have to wait a while to be able to actually, you know, get back into the game and everything is like running smoothly again. So I don't know. It's just a very frustrating experience. Some of these issues that I have, a lot of these issues with the software could be fixed with like specific software updates so that you're able to get a more streamlined experience that isn't a sort of weighty, sort of bogged down Windows experience. But for the meantime, it's just kind of frustrating. And you know, these aren't like exclusive issues to this device. In some ways they are, with like the redundant buttons and things like that. You also have like Windows problems with like other Windows PC handhelds, like the Lenovo Legion or the MSI Claw, you know, for example, or just different things like that. So you run into a lot of these issues that we've seen for years now that aren't really getting improved. I mean, yes, you sort of have an improvement with Xbox full screen experience, but overall you're still seeing some issues that you would have seen before with a previous generation ROG Ally. So is this a device that I would recommend getting? I would say yes, because if you're somebody that like really loves to play, you know, different games that you just can't play on your Steam Deck, then this is a great device because it's Steam Deck-esque in that you can, you know, do whatever you want, you know, play wherever you want and different things like that. But you at least have the sort of the ability to sort of naturally and easily play some of these games that you just can't play on the Steam Deck. There's different ways you can kind of get around, and you know, you can play Xbox games on the Steam Deck. You can cloud game Xbox games on the Steam Deck, but just not like easily or like normally. There's like videos that you have to look up to be able to do some of these things. Whereas with the Xbox Ally, you can do these things natively. And so that is a plus there if you're somebody that really uses Xbox a lot, that's like your main ecosystem, and then you sort of use other ecosystems, then the Xbox Ally can be great there. If you are used to PC handhelds, then the Xbox Ally could be great as well. Now, I'll do a video on why I got the Xbox Ally versus the Xbox Ally X, but just, you know, kind of in short, this is just the far cheaper option. It's $600 versus $1,000, and so in my case, that just made more sense to do something like that, especially because, you know, I mainly play on Steam. A lot of my PC games are on Steam. However, I do also have Game Pass, and so this sort of made a good purchasing decision. It sort of made sense to be able to do this. However, I don't know that this is what I would specifically want to call an Xbox handheld. Not only because it doesn't feel like an Xbox handheld, it just feels like ASUS just made a second generation ROG Ally, and then Xbox came along and said, hey, just here's some money, just put an Xbox button on there. Anyways, I'm just kind of getting sidetracked. I'm going to end the video here. The Xbox Ally is a good pickup if you are interested in picking up a PC handheld, but you got to know what you're getting yourself into, and you got to know that this isn't really an Xbox. Now, if you want my thoughts on the Steam Deck, definitely check out this video right here, or if you want to check out this playlist on a bunch of other gaming handhelds and my thoughts on a bunch of other competitors, definitely check out these videos right here. I'll catch you in either one of these videos. Peace.